Many thanks for all of you to come to this interesting session. I will first present my two colleagues, panelists maybe, and afterwards we go into the subject, and I will alternate some presentation of my two colleagues and questions for the audience. I think the purpose is to be as interactive as possible. I start on my left, start with Abdelmalek Najih, who is information security, GRC expert, PCB trainer, and certification auditor. He's also the CEO of AN Advice, which is a PCB trainer. And on my right side, Roman is a longer story, let us say. Degree in computer science, lecturing several courses at the university, worked as research associate in the university, graduated in the field of brain-computer interfacing, joining Accenture Technology, took over the role of the lead of BCM practice, building an information security and data protection service center at Bosch, and since 2019 he's an associate with Mazar, which is a large auditing and advisory company outside the Big Four, and govern the auditor and consultancy service around ISO 27000, which is, of course, one of the topics. And personally, my name is Jacques Folon, and I'm a university professor in Belgium and France, working for a consulting firm dedicated to digital strategy and GDPR, and CEO of a startup which is called GDPR Folder, which is dedicated to help small and medium-sized companies, self-employed, to be in line with sorry, GDPR. So I think in order to start, I think as far as the topic of today is security incident management with ISO IEC 27001 and ISO IEC 27035, is maybe to ask Roman to make globally the difference between these two ISO standards.
Yeah, thank you. Generally speaking, if you see on the ISO 27001, with which most of us are familiar, you will find just some sections or some controls which take care about information security incident management. Mainly in the organizational section, there's controls 524 to 528, and they generally split off the steps of a normal incident management process. So we start with planning and preparation. Then we have a control regarding assess and decide on the incident. Then we have a control on how to respond to an information security incident. And finally, when we responded, when we corrected all the incident happenings, conducting lessons learned out of this, and finally collection of evidence. Also, we have one single control in the people's section, which is about information security event reporting. So, because people have to report that, not just technology. And if we see the entire ISO 27000 family of standards, then we will see that we have 27001, which are the requirements. Then we have 27002, which tell us what to do in order to fit the requirements in 27001. Then we have 27003, which says how to do that, what is stated in 27002. And then we have following other standards, and the standards starting with 27010 and above are either based on sectoral topics or on functional topics. And one of that standards is ISO 27035, which takes a deeper and a more detailed explanation how incidents, especially information security incidents, should be tracked. So this is a connection. So we start with 27001, our base requirement standard, and then we go into even more detail on 27035. Where we go into more detail on each and every step is described how to do that. Is that?
Yeah, perfect. Could you maybe elaborate a bit? And maybe also define what finally is an incident? Because there are so many definitions and following different type of of norms, or even in GDPR, you have a definition of what is an incident finally?
Yes, but first let me go back to the first question, which is the difference between ISO 27001, 2, and 35. So, of course, so the ISO 27001 contains the requirement and is we can get certified against. I'm talking about the organization. It's not the case for the ISO 27002 and 35. This is number one. Number two, so there is no such standard called ISO 27035 because actually we have a series now. So we have ISO 27035-1, 2, 3, and 4. So the one for the principles and process, 2 for the guidelines for the plan and prepare, 3 for the ICT incident response, and 4, which is still under development, is for the coordination. And to define the incident security incident, information security incident, sorry. So it could be defined as a breach of the CI 38, which is confidentiality, integrity, and availability, but also any breach to internal policies and maybe related to the laws and regulations.
Okay. How could you say that you could prepare to an incident, taking care of the, let's say, the context?
Generally speaking, preparation to an incident is a key for mastering an incident. Just imagine you're running a street and there is a hole on the street and you're about to stuckle on that hole and maybe you will fall down. So if you know it in advance, what would you do? You would get a pillow and put behind the hole, such that if you run and stuckle, then you fall down and then you put your nose on the pillow, not on the road. So this is a sort of a preparation, and that's why it's a key. If you are a company and you're running a business, and is something gonna happen to the business, you have to foresee it. You have to see where could be a hole where you could get stuck. And as a following, you prepare, you make a plan, and you execute some measures, like putting a pillow on the road, because if you fall down, then it is not so hard. You definitely, the preparation to an incident will probably not prevent you from falling down or from getting into the pitfall. Yeah? But it will make your it may make the consequences lower and easier to harbour. One step back to your question, what is the definition of an incident? We always start with a term named event. Event can happen or cannot happen. Event is maybe something positive or something negative. Event is something happened. It may not be an incident yet, but it's something happened. We have a suspicion it could be an incident. Yeah, the first definition, event. The second definition is if you find this event is negative, and we have to do something against it. We had to be prepared for this event. Then it gets an incident. Basically speaking, if you just think this might harm my business, this could be an incident. In case an event is not an incident, then you just exit. Okay, it was just an event, it happened, and that's it. No problems. If you are in an incident, then you have to decide, is that a big incident, small incident? Can I handle it without harming my service level agreements? For example, an IT event, yeah? A server is getting down. This is an event. Yeah, that's bad. It has a potential to harm my service level agreements. So that becomes an incident. I'm finding out that I have some immediate measures already predefined that I shall execute in case of that event, something like a scenario based. Then I execute these corrective measures. There's immediate responses, and the incident is ready. The incident is done, no incident more. In case these measures are not enough, or I don't have any measures, maybe this event or this incident is new to me, then it might get to a crisis or to a disaster. And then we are not in the incident management anymore. We go to business continuity management, because a crisis is something which lasts a long time, and a disaster is something which is very harmful. So you will escalate. We say an event is escalated to an incident is escalated either to a crisis or to a disaster. And if it's very bad, it escalates to both crisis and disaster. Then, after we escalated from an incident to crisis or disaster, we are not in incident management anymore. So we have to switch on our business continuity management or crisis management organization. So this is sort of a definition how I see this and how it's stated in ISO 27031.
Maybe just because not necessarily all the people know the technical vocabulary. Let's say the business continuity is the fact that you may continue to have your activity after a main or important incident, which is of course one of the bases of security. But maybe you could give some practical example of incident and how you could handle that, prepare it, solve them, maybe to give some example to the audience.
Yes, for example, I wouldn't mention the name of the company, but we had some incidents. Sometimes it's false positive, like someone who just lost his USB stick, for example, and which can raise many type of incidents. So first of all, maybe the loss of confidentiality if it's not protected, maybe the loss of data just like this, and meaning availability. But what's most what's more important is, for example, the case of loss of personal data, for example, which is more regulatory than security. So what I wanted to say regarding the plan and prepare is that every company should not just follow the guidelines and the standards as are, but other than that, take into account their context and the resources that they have internally, their processes, for example, if they have a shared service desk or external one, so they can take all of these into consideration to build up their process of reporting the incident, identifying and categorizing the incident.
Okay, and don't forget that if, because you mentioned personal data, that if you have an incident which concerns personal data, you also have to do something concerning the application of GDPR, meaning the fact that you have to analyze it, check if you have to inform the data privacy authority, and even more, maybe sometimes all the data subjects which are concerned, which of course raise some concerns too, which means that the fact to have an incident raise at the same time a lot of questions on the management of it, taking in the various phase and so on, and what do you have to do, and sometimes, and give the example of GDPR, you have in 72 hours within GDPR to react and to inform the data protection authority, which means that of course you have to be prepared. But after this first round, maybe check if there's already one question from the audience concerning what was said already. Nothing means that you were perfectly clear.
Yeah, I have a comment.
Please.
Yes, so regarding the incident of GDPR, for example, so there was an issue which is, for example, we had service desk that is the first contact with the end users. So everybody, whenever they have an issue or an incident or an event or something that is odd, they have to contact the SPOC, the single point of contact, which is the service desk. And sometimes they took, for example, the example of the loss of USB stick. And for them, it's maybe an IT equipment that is lost. So we miss the GDPR part. So the DPO has no idea what's going on. So we can have fines just because of that. So please, when planning and preparing for the incident, I'm talking about the process, look at the process, who is handling what, and how the reporting is going on.
Well, that's one of the questions. Who is, in fact, is managing the incident within a company?
Who is managing the incident? Usually, if it is a information security incident, there is a CISO role, Chief Information Security Officer, who is responsible as a top level to manage the occurrence and the recognition and the corrective actions on that incident. If it is a data protection incident, if you find out during the incident analysis that personal data is affected, then the data protection officer has to be involved and inform, and to be the authorities, data protection authority needs to be informed. But as we heard in the previous panel, the NIS2 directive, the new NIS2 directive, they also say that there are reporting responsibilities to the local information security data or data security authority. I'm coming from Germany. We have an authority who needs to be informed in case of such incident, and they say it's probably will be the same. The German law is not yet issued, but it probably will be the same within 72 hours. Every information security incident which can harm the data or the business or any critical infrastructure, the company needs to inform the authority within 72 hours. The big question is when the 72 hours start counting from. There are some companies which are very inventive, and they say all the time when we are having the incident, all the time we are just having a suspicion that it is an incident, but it's not yet an incident. Yeah? And we can analyze and assess it for some time. But then after, when we find out, oh, okay, this is an incident, then the 72 hours start to count. And I guess that the NIST directive will be formalized, at least in some European countries, in a way that will not give this opportunity to define when it is just a suspicion when it gets started. So it will probably be more harder than it is with data protection. Yeah.
So just to add a comment to this question, so who should manage the incidents? Well, it depends on the organization. Sometimes, for example, we have the CISO, but it's not a person, it's a department, a whole department. We can find even a DPO under the CISO, which is not a great thing to do, but well, it depends. For example, sometimes when we have small businesses, we can have the CIO who is at the same time CISO and DPO and everything. So he can have already receive a large amount of incidents that he can handle himself. But otherwise, in big companies, that we can receive, for example, like 30 incidents per day, I guess the CISO will not have enough time to handle all of them. So this is why the role, the responsibility could be delegated to experts within the company, the people who is aiding it.
Maybe one more element you have to take care also of is the communication. Because if you have a large incident, maybe it could be known outside, and you have to have also somebody in charge of the communication to the public or the communication to the press in order to explain what happens. And maybe with, if you are a listed company, it could be interesting for shareholders and so on and so forth. And maybe something, because there was a recent study of Kaspersky saying that many companies, I don't remember the percentage exactly, in fact realize that there is an incident sometimes 3, 4, 6 months afterwards. Mm-hmm. So how could you make something in order to avoid that and to be aware of the incident as soon as possible? What could be the procedure that you could put in place?
Well, it depends on the type of incidents. For example, it might be a hidden vulnerability that will be discovered months later. Then for this kind of issue, there is nothing to do about. But maybe that's kind of vulnerability, for example, regular one, but I don't believe it's efficient. So we cannot expect to identify and detect incidents always as soon as possible.
We say that at least for technical incidents, you should have a sort of a monitoring systems in place, like some technical tools which are sitting on your network, which are monitoring your network devices, which are monitoring your servers, your databases, and report some suspicious activity. This might be an intrusion detection system. Yeah? This might be the resource consumption monitors. This might be security operations centers, which monitors the logs, what the applications write. And in most cases, if it is an IT security incident, then I would say that the SOC guys from continuous monitoring of the logs would report that incident suspicion first, yeah, and then this suspicion will be hardened and will be escalated from an event to an incident.
Yes, but still there will be no 100% guarantee that we will detect the incident on the spot. This is what I mean. Because, for example, I don't want to go too technically, but an example of an attack is someone who is forging packets on, at the level of networking. So he could manage to transfer a file within the network packets. So there is no way to detect this kind of intrusion at the time it's going on, you know.
Of course, SOC is only for technical items. Yeah. If you have a human failure, like For example, somebody prints a document on a printer which is staying in the corridor, yeah, and forgets to pick it up. But this is a strictly confidential document. Yeah. Shit happens, yeah, but somebody else is going in the evening through the corridor and sees there is a batch of paper lying on the printer, takes a batch of paper, read strictly confidential on it. Is that an incident? Yes, sure. Of course. Yeah. Can you prevent this incident? Can you detect this incident? No. Unless somebody goes around and picks it up, the piece of paper, you cannot detect it because it was printed. The person who printed it, he was allowed to print it. He was allowed to read it. But he just forgotten to pick it up. This is a human failure, and this is a security incident where strictly confidential material was made available to someone who has no access, who should not have access to that.
Yeah, but there are some preventive controls that can be implemented to prevent loose actions. For example, the loose issues as an example that we are providing.
Of course,
so
of course.
Yes, some mistakes,
but you like pin printing or card printing, whatever, yeah. But you don't know this before it happens. When usually, yeah, and people don't want to have to make to implement controls which they think they don't require, which might harm the business. Every security control stops or slows the business process, like pin printing or whatever. Nobody likes them, yeah. But when it happens once or 2 times or 3 times, and when there is a damage out of it, then the management starts thinking, okay, what could we do? Yeah, maybe we could implement pin printing, even if it slowing down a little bit our processes. Yeah? But that is what could be elaborated in a lessons learned from one of the incidents. So once we get the incident, once we have the harm, once we responded to the incident, we start the lessons learned. This is one point of the cycle, and during the lessons learned, we determine, okay, we might implement a pin printing procedure.
Michael, do you have something?
Yeah, I do have a question. Hi, Michael Redman. I train at the ECB, I do audits, I also am a consultant for many of my own clients, but I'm also the deputy CISO for Louisville, Kentucky, which is my full-time job, and everything else is the other full-time job. So my question is, in the different roles I've had, I've noticed that as ISO 2701 and 2705, the risk management, were updated in 2022. Great, companies are now getting ready. We're doing the risk right, we're doing the controls right. ISO 27035 was not updated until 2023. People are still not doing their incident response plans according to the new standard, which includes having a incident response team that includes HR if needed, that includes facilities, that includes the people in charge of the network, your enterprise architecture have to be on the incident response plan. And as soon as it looks like an event might be strong, might be more than just a false positive, they're supposed to include who they think might at least make them aware that they may need it to be on standby, there may be something coming out. And I'm noticing that there's 27035 is like, we're going to get to it next. But the incident response next, they may not have to worry about it because they may not be in existence at the time they're attacked. Dallas was just hit in May with a ransomware attack. They have 200 IT employees. They were not prepared. What they did was they implemented incident response. They didn't do it properly. They did it. They had a situation not following ISO. They were following their own probably NIST, the old version, which has been updated, but at the time they were following it wasn't. So there were gaps.
Could you go to your question, please?
Yes, my
Thank
question is, with a situation like that where they took over the fire trucks, they took over so that people's homes burned for a week. They took over the ambulances, people died for a week. But they weren't prepared for incident response and hadn't been planned. So do you see around, I've noticed in the US, that people are not implementing the ISO 27035, they're putting it off, they're not doing the teams properly. I'm wondering if you're seeing that more in Europe and around the world? Or is it just the US that's not taking that into consideration? That's my question.
So first part of your question, whether the ISO 27035 will be updated or not.
It was updated in 2023.
Yeah.
Yeah,
already.
but ISO is a big organization, so they are slow. Yeah. So.
No, ISO was updated in 2020.
Okay.
ISO 2005?
Yes, in 2023, but it was 1.5 years later. Yeah. Then the ISO 27001 was updated.
Right.
Yeah. And the second part is ISO 27035 is a guideline. It's a guideline for information security management. Yeah. So you cannot, as Abdelmalek said, you cannot be compliant or you cannot be certified. You can be compliant, but you cannot be certified according to ISO 27035.
The question is, are you seeing people take into consideration the new incident response that's suggested in ISO 27035 to comply with the controls that run in 27001, or are they still putting that off?
So the new update version of 27035 is in
maybe
line.
maybe could
Yeah.
go direct to the question.
Yeah, I see that's implemented partially, to be honest, but not fully. Because for many companies, they don't have already the maturity to implement the ISO 27001 fully, to be honest. So they took the parts of the ISO 27002, which is the Annex A, and then maybe they go further to implement a separate policy for the incident management and the process with use cases, but just this. They don't go really through the whole series of the ISO 27003, 335. So no.
That's true. There's one element which was mentioned which is quite important too, is to take care of human resources. Never forget that more than 80% of the incidents are made by humans. And finally, we have all a lot of job to do as a training and giving code of conducts and again training about the various possibility, and the example you said is typical. And that's something which is quite often forgotten. In the measure we are sometimes too focused on IT, and I think human resources are also quite important. But to go to the next step, maybe could elaborate about the important challenge, limitation of these two standards.
Yes, thank you. So the importance of the standard, why should we implement this? Because it's a standard. I know it's weird. So standard meaning that it will facilitate the communication with your clients and providers. So you will be speaking the same language, you know. So you will be going through the same steps for the process, etc. Also for the reporting, for example, if you communicate an incident report, it will be understood by your clients, your customers. So this is number one. Number two is to comply with the ISO 27001, obviously, and to gain in performance. The challenges is, so you know that the first part, which is the principles and the policy. So what we get as consultants, the difficulty is always to make it approved by top management, because they don't really care about the details. So, and once it's not approved by top management, it's not sponsored, you will always find issues to push it and to make it into force within the company. You cannot force it if you don't have the sponsorship. The challenge also is that the ISO 27035 is not that technical, so it might help manage a bunch of security issues and incidents, but not the technical ones, like, for example, ransomware, like any kind of technical attacks, for example. So it doesn't help a lot, but it doesn't say so, because it's a high-level standard. So it's to provide guidelines to manage it from the point of view of management. But you can always get some help from other framework and certification, like, for example, I'm not saying anything, but like EC Council, certified incident handler, for example, etc. Some other techniques, etc. So that's what the second part. So challenges and
A limitation.
yes, and that was the limitation. So the technical part.
I think the importance also to have a sponsorship from the top management, of course, is also essential. It's not something that you do or the IT guys do on his side. It should be something strategic also, which means that you have to also to convince the management.
And the ISO standards, the management systems, they do not prevent you from technical pitfalls. The management, what is a management system? Just a carpet or a set of boxes where you put in some material inside. Yeah, and if you are compliant, if you are certified according to ISO 27001, then that means you have a wall with a lot of drawers where you can put in some information inside. And if something happens, if an incident happens, you will know which drawer to get and what information to put out of it. Yeah, that will help you to master that incident. But just having the drawers, putting it something that does not prevent you from incident, especially not from technical incident, even less from human mistakes. Yeah? So just have in mind that being certified according to ISO 27001 or whatever other standards will not help you to prevent, or will not help you to that incidents do not happen at all. Yeah? They will happen, but you will be able to easily handle them.
And how could you highlight the fact that even if you have this certification, that goes onto the various level of the company, that everybody is updated on the various specification, and what are the consequences of his or her job specifically? How do you communicate within the company about this certification?
So the question is how to communicate with
Yeah.
Okay, so communication already is a clause within the ISO 27001, which is an important one. It's not like sending some emails. It's a real process, a PDCA process, Plan, Do, Check, Act, from up to the top to bottom. So within this process, we will have to define what to communicate and when, by who, and to who, the audience, of course. And this should be related to the whole of the ISMS, including but not limited to the information security incidents. This is number one. Number two, we have also to make sure that we communicate with the interested parties. Of course, we should not send the same email to everybody. A client is not like a provider, etc., not a regulation. We have to make that in mind. And we have to communicate intelligently depending on the audience. Because if we communicate everything technical to top management, they will not understand what's going on, for example. And it's not the same way that we have to communicate to engineers or the IT guys.
Okay.
Generally, one small addendum is if you are a bigger company and you have a marketing communication department or some person who is responsible for marketing communication, please involve them before you communicate. So not just that CISO starts his communication to the customers or to any authority. Please involve some legal guys or some guys from marketing communication before you shoot out some communication. It could be wrong. Could be wrong.
Could we maybe elaborate a bit about what is the concrete, the practical benefit for a company to be certified and to implement these two ISO standards practically?
To be certified will increase the reputation, for example, will make the relation with suppliers and clients more flexible, more fluid, I would say, because, for example, as an ex-IT security compliance officer, I used to check the new service providers, and the first thing we do is to send them a questionnaire, a very tough one. So if we know that they are certified, for example, we can skip parts of that questionnaire. So this will make their life easy. And if we are the service provider, of course, it will help us bypass, let's say, loss of burden during the QIC, for example. This is number one. For what's the last part of the question? Certification.
The practical advantage for the company.
Yes, the practical advantages, I would say, is that, well, what's happening has happened, as we say, but we can limit the impact, for example. So if we have, let's give an example of someone who is using a tool for crypto mining within the company. Sometimes it's illegal, in some countries it's not, it's legal, there is no issue, but the company will lose in performance. So they have a server, a strong one, but which is use a crypto miner, so they will not get the performance they are working on, for example. This is number one. Number two, they might face regulatory issues. So this kind of process, like information security management process, will help the company at least identify, detect, and respond quickly and efficiently.
Basically, on the limitations, as I just outlined beforehand, it's just a management system. It's just a system to manage your information, to manage your preparedness plans. It's just a system to manage your regulations. It's just a system to manage your business continuity plans or whatever, or incident response plans. But the execution of this continuity plans or the execution of these measures, this lies within the individual departments. Like if it is an IT incident within the IT department, they have to execute it, and they have to know how to and they have to execute it quickly. Yeah? They have to know about it. Just being certified according to that norm does not give you the confidence that something will not happen. Yeah?
But we heard about the advantage, but what could be the challenge, which would be the burden to put that in place, even if you receive the decision from the management, for the board, saying, okay, let's go. What are the main pinpoints, the main pain points that you could have in implementing these two norms? No?
Okay. So, well, there are two parts. There are the implementation and the run. For the implementation, well, both. We need someone who is skilled to implement the process and to handle it. But for sure, for the run, we need all staff of the company to be aware, but also trained and ready to detect and identify any issue, any incidents, if any. So I guess the challenges are the skills of the implementers, skills of people who are running the process, and the knowledge and awareness of all staff, which is not always in the
one of the pain points, I have a customer, just got in my mind, I have a customer, and there was an audit, and we asked, do you have an incident response plan? We have a very general one because we never needed it. It never happened to us that something strong. And we say, yeah, good. Risk is accepted. Residual risk is accepted by the management. Okay. Couple of months later, we see that that company received a ransomware attack. Not us. Not
okay.
They received a ransomware attack. Their data was encrypted, and that was done during the backup procedure. So you can imagine the backup data is also encrypted. So what happens? By the way, that was a health insurance company, and they have lost all the invoices they collect from the doctors. Just a moment. So they had to pay for the customers the payback which they obliged to, irrespective of the invoices which they collected. Usually they would pay some limited payback or no payback at all, but now they don't know what invoices they had. So in order to prevent asking questions, being asked by the customers, why that payback, why not bigger, why not smaller, yeah? They just said to all the customers, we will pay the full payback to all the customers. That is a pain. That is a pain of not having incident management. Sorry, you had a question.
I'm interested about if you have tried this, because I'm an old hacker and I can say you're attack this the wrong way. Because if I want to hack your company today, I would go by your side in your house and look at you when you are taking a smoke, when you are going to lunch. I photo your badge and so on. Then I go into your organization, put in some devices, and then work from the outside. And then I start to work your company for about a year before I attack you with your compromised and tell you that you're hacked. So you will have backups for a year encrypted. You will have lost a lot of papers in your offices. And I know a lot of passwords of your organization. So when you do your incident management, as you say about compliance, I will attack you again. So,
but it's absolutely true. There is an...
So what I wonder is, have you, when you do the compliance, checked if it works in the real life? Because not everyone is Russian, Indian, Chinese that use ransomware as a way of war to interfere with the Europeans or other patch this.
Absolutely. It becomes to be a sort of a normal job. I had that with a customer. And I was quite surprised when I called the hacker who put a ransomware. And in fact, it's absolutely true because they put the ransomware 1 year before. And after 1 year, they said, well, we have ransomware. And of course, everybody was checking the backup, which were completely ruined. And it was amazing to see that when I called this guy, the first it was to Telegram and said, for which file? I said, okay. And then I gave the name of the company. And then I explained that it was impossible to pay that amount because there was nothing else to pay. And the insurance company was okay, which was surprising that the insurance company becomes to pay now. And I guess, well, it was a negotiation because, in fact, what they request was 100% of the turnover, which was a little bit too much. And finally, we arrived to a settlement. And I said, well, next question is, how could you guarantee that you don't do it again? And the answer of this guy was fantastic. He said, we have a certain ethic. Which means that if we do that, nobody will pay. And that's it. But you are perfectly right. And in fact, in this type of things, what we have to do if we have to, and there's something we didn't touch yet, but the relationship with the insurance company, for the cyber insurance, in which we have to do things in order to have the companies to pay if there is an attack, of course. But I don't know if you have to...
No, I just want to say that I've already said that there is no assurance 100% that the incident management process will protect from incidents to happen or to detect them on the spot. So I'll just say that maybe a few minutes ago. And being an ex-hacker, you know that there is no flawless system or information system. So we're just trying to make the hacker's life harder, but there is no 100% guarantee.
And I have to agree with your first part of the question that incident testing is important. And also, if I'm auditing for ISO 27001, we always ask for incident response testing, not just having the incident response plan prepared, but also for the schedule of the tests and conduction of the tests and results of the tests and lessons learned from the results of the tests. Even if no incidents happened in this year or in this half year, whatever the cycles is, even then we have at least a test of an incident happening, and we have a lessons learned in order to facilitate the continual improvement process also for our incident management, not just for the ISMS. Yeah.
And the importance to have somebody external to test this is of course, of the utmost importance. But also, you have probably in each of your country, and we have that in my country. You have it in France and other. You have bodies like ANSI, like CERT, and those sort of things, which are very helpful. And I think it's also important for the companies to have contact with these national bodies who, of course, follow that sort of things and to help them in order to be up to date. And of course, the worst thing is just taking this ISO norm and said, well, that's okay, I could sleep quietly and there's nothing happening, of course. It's a perpetual fight. And we just have, in the previous panel, discussion about the help of AI hackers, which gives, of course, increase the possibility of hacking also and the number of possibilities. And of course, today it becomes more and more complicated to manage those sort of things. But of course, these two norms are something which could be helpful for companies, at least to realize what they have to do. We still have around 15 minutes. Are there any other questions from the audience? The gentleman there first, and then the gentleman behind, and then 3 questions already.
Great, thank you. You guys are doing great up there. First of all, Stefan, I'm going to take that TT pattern you just gave me. I'm going to report that to MITRE and maybe create the first Swedish group in their attack group list over there, since we know how you execute your attacks. My question is around 27035. Can you elaborate on what it says about crisis leadership?
I have to look into the standard, maybe Control F, crisis, whatever. But I would guess I would guess it's not mentioned there directly because crisis management is a part of business continuity management. If you have a crisis, you have a long-term incident, and this is not anymore inside the normal incident management, which you can manage within a couple of days or whatever, weeks, so within a short time. Because crisis is long, like the COVID crisis, it took us almost 2 years to pass it, and no incident management would be able to do that. So I would guess, that's my strong guess, that it says not yet, but we have another standard, ISO
316, no 16.
Oh, for business continuity management, crisis management.
Yeah, actually,
yeah,
22301 is for the business continuity, and 22316 is for the crisis management.
Okay. So the next question, the gentleman behind.
Thank you, panelists. I'm going to stand up, and I will use my 30 seconds rule to ask this question. Now become technical and ask 2 questions in one. One of my first questions will go to the audience, and then the second question will go to the panelists, if that's okay. Fantastic. Now, one of the challenging factors that we've encountered some times back is one of the principles within the regulation which states that compliance by design and by default. Now the question to the audience is this: who among you have got compliance of your assets that is not compliant by default or by design? By a show of hands, if your assets are not compliant by default or by design, by show of hands. That's the question. If you're not compliant by default or by design. Okay, which means that only 2 people can attest to the fact that their assets might not be compliant by default or by design. Now the question to the panelists will be, who exactly determines that an asset is compliant by design and by default? And I think that is one of the elements that we've struggled with for quite a while before the regulation came through. Thank you.
Is that an academic question?
Yes. Just my colleague said it's an academic question. The question is, well, the fact is that also it's a question of, I think, even relationship of consciousness from the management about that, because it has to come from the top. Everything which is by design means that somebody has to inform the project leader about the fact that he has to think about that. Sometimes the person in charge of the CISO is maybe not even aware about a new project, about a new building or whatever, and have the information afterwards. Same thing within GDPR. Normally the DPO should be informed in advance, which is never the case, which means that I think it's the whatever by design is by default is something very nice in theory, and you probably very well know the sentence that theory is a fantastic world where everybody wants to live.
No, as from my point of view, no asset can be compliant by design and by default. So no assets. You have to make it compliant by some activities.
Yeah. So next question is somebody there? Good. No, but I think it's for the future.
Okay. Thank you so much. I just want to ask, looking at the perspective of ISO 27001 and 27035, I'm just looking at it. Security incident of third-party vendors is a very big issue. Like what you said the other time, looking at the ransomware issue. I mean, what is the best approach? I mean, you could just be considering this aspect for your organization. Then how do you extend it to managing the risks of the third-party provider, cloud services, for an example?
By the way, it's the topic of the next panel.
Okay, is it less? Oh, great. That means I've been forward. Okay, fine.
But
I'll wait to that.
But it's anyway an important question. Something which is interesting within the GDPR, by instance, is the fact that you are, and any company is now responsible for the choice of the sub-processor, of the suppliers, whatever, which means that you have to check. You have to check for GDPR, by instance, but I think you are responsible also to check the security of your supplier. And if you put something in the cloud, well, you have to choose, which means your responsibility, at the end of the day, the responsibility of the company is to make a good choice, taking into consideration various techniques, but also the security of your suppliers, of course.
That is fully correct for GDPR, for data protection, but also in the ISO 27001 you have a special dedicated control where it is asked, do you forward your security requirements to your subcontractors? Yeah? Yes, no, and how do you validate that your subcontractors, wherever it is applicable, do you comply with the security requirement at least as strong as you have to your customer? So there is one special. Ask me in the break which number I can give it.
Actually, we used the term risk transfer in the past. Now it's risk sharing, because actually we are still responsible of the risk, no matter what it is at the client or provider's premises or at their responsibilities. So what I suggest is to include, for example, the right of audit within the contract, so you can audit them and check their incident management process, how they handle the incidents, etc. And you have to monitor their incidents, even if it's not at your premises. And by the way, it's included in the ISO 27001 and other standards.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you for this discussion.
The mic is coming.
Okay, it's interesting to hear from you all of this information about, I'll say, the 27001 and 27035. However, as you know, that it is a standard that is to be implemented and improve it all the time, verify it, and either 27001, including 27035, which is, as per the last or the old standard, it is the Chapter 16, or actually it is some other controls included in the Annex A. But what is the most important, this standard is very well verified, but it is the minimum that the organization is to implement, verify, and I'll say ensure, I'll say, the improvement. My question is that there are some controls, like, for example, the backup. The backup, for example, it is a very important control that the organizations are to implement. However, actually, we see that the technology is, I would say, changing. So many organizations do not use the tape, for example, anymore. So they have disk-to-disk, for example, backup, or from the main site to their sites. What's happening actually is with the attacks, either as said, I'll say, the colleague, that we are to wait for those attacks daily. Can happen, those incidents, either internally or externally. So what about the backup in this case? Because it is one of the best resolution, and the, I'll say, from site to site. So if it is a hot backup, an online backup, and it is an on-site backup, it is to be a very important threat to be, I'll say, reduced and to be analyzed by the customer itself. Are we to turn back to the main tape, hardware, tapes, and to make the externalization, or to continue with this new VM? Even there is some controls in, for example, in these backup solution, for example, but there is a 0 day, for example, I'll say issues that, for example, this solution cannot reduce, for example, the risk for load balancing or the backup online and on-site. This is the question, please.
Thank you.
Can you please reformulate just the question?
Because you asked maybe 3 or 4 questions within your speech between...
Is it going back to tapes?
Yeah, especially for the backup online and on-site.
Okay.
Is it effective supposed to be, or we have to turn back to the, say, the old solutions with tape and tape externalization? What do you think?
Well, we know that we have here people from almost all over the world, so it depends also on the geographic area, on the country, on the resources. Sometimes it's good to go on cloud, sometimes it's good to stay in premise and use tapes. Sometimes it's good to use applications, sometimes we use only Excel sheets. So it depends. So it depends on...
The question of security also is, as far as the risk is increasing, there was a panel this morning in which they say that, the panelists said that, well, it's needing more and more necessary to go to huge companies for cloud in order to have more possibility to fight against the various new type of attacks. And others, of course, may go in the other direction and say, well, I will keep everything myself just to be sure. I think both schools could exist, but the question is the risks are enormous and increasing a lot. And then, well, the question to go to place where, and of course the question is where are these places, because they are mainly Americans, which is another story. But the fact is that what is the best way to secure your data finally? And that's the main question, that's the risk analysis. And finally, you decide what is the best. If you consider that the risks are limited, if you go to a big cloud operators, well, do it. If you prefer to do it yourself and store it because you consider at the end of the day, at the end of your risk analysis, that is the best solution for you, go. But at the end of the day, it's your responsibility to make the choice, and who knows what is the best choice. I don't know if you have...
Yeah, I think that the question on what media you do the backup is question number 26. After you responded to 25 first questions, when you do the backup, how often you do the backup, when you do the restore, where you place it, whatever. And then at 26th place, then comes the question, do we do it in the cloud, or do we do it on a tape, or do we burn it on a CD or whatever, or microfiche?
Yeah. Or paper.
Yeah, or paper.
The issue is when you are attacked, you can be attacked on both sides, on mail and their sides.
Yeah, and the CD cannot work, and the magnetic band can be demagnetized or degaussed and whatever. Every backup media has advantages and shortcomings, and you have to select the right one. Yeah?
I think if somebody has the final solution, he or she will be extremely rich. And not here today, probably. I have to thank because we're just running out of time, and we have to thank both panelists and the audience to be done for your question and to be there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.